Ok, boa tarde a todos. Meu nome é Selby Pegoraro, sou professor ingressante aqui na Escola de Comunicações e Artes. Estou começando agora, provavelmente em 2025. Tenho a honra de estar aqui ao lado do professor Roberto Elísio dos Santos, que é o vice-coordenador do nosso grupo de pesquisa, que é o Observatório de Histórias em Quadrinhos da ECA USP. O nosso convidado, Frederick Stromberg, e temos a honra de ter aqui na nossa presença o vice-cônsul honorário Peter Johansson. Com muita felicidade que a gente recebe, a gente sabe que foi um evento um pouco de última hora, né? Não sei se o professor Roberto contou ao Frederick que vários dos nossos colegas viajaram para Campo Grande para encontrá-lo, né? Para ver a apresentação dele. Ele é muito conhecido entre os nossos pesquisadores. Esse livro aqui, por exemplo, o professor Nobu Shinen, que é O Negro nos Quadrinhos do Brasil, foi inspirado, was inspired in your book, né? Professor Nobu Shinen. Então, nós conhecemos o trabalho do Frederick, estamos muito felizes com a presença dele aqui. A nossa palestra será gravada, né? Vai estar no nosso canal do YouTube do Observatório. Para quem precisar de certificado, né, de participação, eu vou passar um papel para vocês assinarem o nome, e-mail, que depois a gente envia corretamente para vocês. Então, dou as boas-vindas, eu vou passar a palavra para o professor Roberto, depois o vice-cônsul vai dar umas palavras aqui. A gente fica muito feliz que o nosso grupo de pesquisa vem tendo muito contato com os consulados, né? A gente já teve com o do Japão, da Bélgica. A gente fica muito feliz agora, embora esteja dessa maneira atribulada, mas de estreitar os laços para que a gente possa, inclusive, ter outros contatos, inclusive para o nosso congresso internacional que a gente realiza anualmente no mês de agosto. Mas passo a palavra agora ao professor Roberto.
Obrigado, boa tarde a todos. Eu gostaria de apresentar para vocês o professor Stromberg. Ele é professor, jornalista e quadrinista, lá da Suécia. É um país que a gente tem poucas publicações aqui no Brasil de quadrinhos, né, mas eles têm uma produção muito grande lá. Espero que a gente tenha mais quadrinistas suecos sendo publicados no Brasil por editoras brasileiras. Então, livros sobre os quadrinhos suecos, acho que nós não temos, nós só em inglês. Bom, eu vou passar então a palavra ao Peter, vice-cônsul da Suécia.
Bom, primeiramente queria agradecer, né, aos professores Roberto e Selby por terem nos recebido, né, com tão pouca antecedência, como já foi mencionado. Entendo também que guardaram melhor por último, né, em relação às colaborações com os consulados. Estamos a toda a disposição, né, para estreitar os laços e pensar em colaborações futuras, né, a partir de hoje também. A Suécia é um país, afinal, que deixou muitos rastros, né, no Brasil de várias formas, né, de termos comerciais. Coincidentemente temos uma rainha brasileira também que ainda mais coincidentemente se encontra no Brasil nesse momento, e tem N empresas suecas ativas, né, aqui no país. E em relação à cultura, nós das repartições suecas no Brasil, embaixada, consulados, nós estamos querendo cada vez trazer mais cultura para o Brasil, mais cultura sueca. Então, foi eu acho que um sinal, né, da importância desse evento também, que o livro chegou poucos minutos aqui antes, né, o primeiro livro em português, Imagens Negras nos Quadrinhos, né, do professor Frederick. Então, daqui para frente, né, vamos conversar sobre outras colaborações. Já fomos o país foco da Feira do Livro em Ribeirão Preto, agora o Frederick participou na Feira do Livro em Porto Alegre, já tivemos outros escritores suecos participando lá também. Agora parte para Campo Grande, né, primeiro encontro internacional da Aspas. Então, vamos pensar em outras ações para o futuro. E quero também mencionar que a temática, né, dos livros, né, dos estudos, das pesquisas do Frederick, coincidem em muito, né, com os valores da Suécia, enfim, abordando essas temáticas sociais, né, os quadrinhos no Oriente Médio. Então, para mim, vai ser uma lição também, e com isso acho que me calo para poder passar a palavra para o professor Frederick, que agora se pergunta o que eu falei. Muito obrigado, né, pela tua licença. I know, that's what I wanted to say. Good. So.
Sim. He said bad things about you. Now, agora a palavra está com o professor Stromberg, a quem a gente agradece muito a presença, né? E no final a gente vai ter o lançamento do livro dele, Imagens Negras nos Quadrinhos, uma história visual. Tá? Inclusive ele fala de vários quadrinhos brasileiros, vários personagens brasileiros no seu livro.
Thank you. Am I gonna go Bing to you, or could I have?
I think you could. I mean, this.
It's not from that. No, this is mine. But could I have something to click? Is that too far? Du säger ping. Okej, ja, då kör vi det. Det är lite klurigt för jag lägger upp mina spel på mycket tryck. Det är det går ut på liksom. Så att vi får se hur det funkar. Okay, and you're gonna do the translations, right? So you're gonna need that. Let's do this. All right. Is this okay? Can you hear me? Thank you for being here with such short notice. I have a cold, and that's giving me asthma. I'm going to cough and I'm going to sigh. That means that I have too little air. Doesn't mean that I'm bored, it just means that I need more air.
Ele está dizendo que ele tem asma, de vez em quando ele vai tossir, vai gasgar, quer dizer que ele esteja enfadado, mas que é a questão da asma dele. Ele agradeceu por termos feito esse evento em tão pouco tempo.
And of course, as you heard, I'm here because one of my books has just been translated into Portuguese. And this is a book that I've been writing on and off since the 1990s. So I'm going to talk a bit about why I wrote this book, which some might find a bit strange.
Ele disse que ele veio para fazer o lançamento do livro. É um livro que ele começou a escrever em 1989. E por que ele quis fazer esse livro, essa pesquisa? Porque é algo estranho para ele. Anteriormente ele estava falando que a maioria da população da Suécia é igual, né? Olhos azuis e tal, claro. E é interessante para os suecos interagirem com outras culturas e pessoas diferentes.
Bing. Until. I have been working with comics since the 1990s. It's an art form that I find fascinating. For the readers, often it seems very, very easy to read and to understand what's happening. But to do that and to make comics work seamlessly as a communication from an artist to a reader is very, very hard. And that communication is part of my fascination with comics.
Ele tem trabalhado com quadrinhos desde os anos 90 e essa relação autor-leitor é bastante difícil, mas é isso que motiva ele a trabalhar com quadrinhos.
And I do a lot of work with comics. So here you see an image from my school in Sweden, in Malmö, which has been run for 25 years and offer a 3-year course for adults in studying to become comics artists.
Essa imagem é da escola dele em Malmö, um lugar da Suécia, onde as pessoas aprendem a ser artistas de quadrinhos.
And in Sweden, a lot of the debut artists in comics come from my school. And there are like about 10 graphic novels from Sweden translated into Brazilian. Almost all of them were made at my school as projects. So the school has had a big impact on the comics culture of Sweden.
Vários artistas novos estudaram na escola professor e cerca de 10 álbuns de quadrinhos da Suécia foram publicados no Brasil. Então essa é a grande maneira dele contribuir com os quadrinhos.
Another thing I do in Sweden, I realized a long time ago that comics have had a hard time and not always been treated with respect as an art form. That has influenced all levels of society, including that comics have not been preserved in the archives in Sweden. So 25 years ago we started a specific archive for comics, and it is now the biggest archive for comics in Northern Europe.
Ele disse que houve uma grande produção de quadrinhos na Suécia e que foi criado um arquivo, um grande arquivo desse material, né? A gente pode ver aqui, e é o maior arquivo de quadrinhos do norte da Europa.
Bing. I also do exhibitions. I love to show off comics and see if we can find new readers. And transforming something that is usually printed and two-dimensional into an exhibition, which I think should be three-dimensional, is difficult. And here it's an exhibition shown in Paris where we did, do you know the expression paper theater? When you push out a stage and paper and small dolls and you put them around. We did that, but in full scale. And that was very popular. And that's how you can go from 2 to 3 dimensions and making it interesting, not just having originals on a wall.
São feitas vários eventos presenciais, com apresentações. Essa aqui foi na França.
Paris, yeah.
Perto, Paris. E ele acredita que quadrinhos não é uma coisa para ficar em prateleiras na parede, mas que é uma experiência que as pessoas precisam ver tridimensionalmente para angariar novos leitores.
I also really enjoy doing artist talks on stage. Normally I'm the one interviewing, and I love doing that because I love to pry into the minds of comics artists, trying to understand how they think, how they organize things, how they try to communicate, and trying to understand the process from an idea to an actual comic in a book.
Ele gosta de entrevistar artistas no palco, né, porque ele quer saber qual é o processo mental do artista para produzir quadrinhos, como eles pensam, né, e como eles imaginam que é o quadrinho que eles vão fazer.
And here you see, here I'm talking to the Israeli comics artist Rutu Modin, who does beautiful graphic novels where you can really see how life is in Israel. Not wars, not all the things you see in the news, ordinary Israeli people. And this is Don Rosa from the States, the most famous illustrator of Donald Duck comics in the world, who is Don Rosa. Don Rosa. And it's interesting because... Oh, you can do that first.
Aqui ele está entrevistando Don Rosa, né, que é quadrinista que fez bastante histórias do Pato Donald, de patinhas para Disney. A gente conhece ele aqui, acho que temos todas as histórias e capas do Don Rosa publicadas aqui no Brasil.
And in Northern Europe, Donald Duck comics are very popular. They've been published weekly since 1948. Everyone reads them. Your mother or father read them. Your grandfathers read them, and grandmother. So he is a superstar when it comes to Sweden, Denmark, Norway. In America, he can go into a comics festival. No one cares. No one cares because in America, in the States, sorry, no one cares about Disney comics. So he loves to travel to Northern Europe because there he's a rock star, and he finds that funny. Yep.
Ele falou que o Don Rosa gosta de viajar para o norte da Europa porque lá ele é um superstar, né? Então, que nos Estados Unidos ele vai nos festivais, mas ninguém se importa com ele, né? Nos eventos de quadrinhos, nas convenções, ele é quase desconhecido. E que os quadrinhos Disney são muito populares na Suécia, e que gerações anteriores liam esses quadrinhos e os jovens hoje continuam lendo. Em Sweden, Denmark,
Norway, Finland, but also Germany, Spain, Italy, all of Europe.
Italy is the place, the country that makes a lot of.
Italy and Denmark.
Denmark.
Yes, a big producers of. Dan Yipes, yeah, and that's Netherlands.
Ele está falando que os quadrinhos são populares na Noruega, na Dinamarca, na Alemanha e na Itália tem uma grande produção de quadrinhos Disney. E aí eu lembrei do Dan Yipes, que é um holandês que faz quadrinhos para a Dinamarca.
Oh, do post questions. Raise your hand and post a question. I love questions. I love having an interaction. So if you have any idea or thoughts or just want to say something about what we're talking about, do so, please.
Ele falou que quem quiser fazer pergunta, levanta a mão, faz pergunta. Ele gosta muito dessa interação, tá? Então, fica aberto aí para quando ele estiver falando alguma coisa aqui, se a pessoa tiver alguma coisa para falar, para perguntar. Tá?
Ping, ping. This is just to show that I do a lot of work with comics. I am also a comics character. This is a comic strip. This is published all over Northern Europe in newspapers and in comic books. It's drawn by my wife. And the family you see up there are the family in the strip. My wife does have long blonde hair. The father is a bit younger, but that's me. And those are two of my kids. So we don't have a cat. That's fictitious. Hang on. No? Should do you translate?
Yes. Ali nesse círculo tem a mulher dele, que é loira, ele, os filhos e o gato que não é gato, é ficcional. E aqui uma tira que a mulher dele faz, né, que é a family strip.
It was started by my wife, who's probably in Sweden would be regarded as third generation feminist or something. She loves old school American comic strips from the States. So she decided to do a modern day version of Blondie, traditional American comic strip, but without all the sexism. So she made the female character the main character and did away with all the sort of sexism of the Blondie comic strip.
A mulher dele gosta dos desenhos antigos, os quadrinhos antigos dos Estados Unidos. Ela tem uma referência muito grande da personagem Blondie, que aqui no Brasil foi chamada Belinda. Só que ela tirou todo o sexismo, né, nos quadrinhos estadunidenses. A Blondie não é a protagonista. E nas histórias feitas pela mulher do professor Stromberg, a protagonista é a mulher.
Bing, bing. Bing, bing, bing. Stop. I am also the chief editor of Bilderbubbla, which is the biggest journal on comics in Northern Europe. It was started already in 1968, which is very early. There is one journal which is older and it's still published. It's Stripschrift from the Netherlands. It's half a year older. It was started earlier in 1968, but we try harder.
Ele falou que são publicações que começaram 25 anos antes de 68 e eles trabalham duro para fazer isso. Eu tenho aquela I have that witch.
Yep.
But in English.
Yep.
Aquela bruxinha, ela foi publicada, é uma coisa meio underground, ela foi publicada nos Estados Unidos. Precisamos publicar aqui.
And this journal was started in 1968 because in the 50s and 60s in Sweden and all over the world, comics was being portrayed as bad, as dangerous, as something that if you read it as a kid, you would become a criminal and you would become illiterate. And we actually had burnings of comics because they should be eradicated. And that kept going for a long time. So this journal was started to be a forum for positive, intelligent discussions about comics without prejudice.
Esse jornal, essa publicação, começou, desculpa, falei errado antes, começou em 68, numa época em que havia uma perseguição muito grande dos quadrinhos. Quadrinhos foram queimados, né? Foram proibidos porque a ideia que se tinha é que as crianças que liam quadrinhos se tornariam criminosos e analfabetos. E a ideia deles é mostrar o contrário, que os quadrinhos são importantes. E essa publicação se tornou um fórum de discussão sobre quadrinhos.
And if you're an editor, this is published 4 times a year. If you're an editor, chief editor, you never have a day off. So this is the next issue. And I was actually doing the last corrections on that at my hotel room just before I was picked up to go here.
falou que estava corrigindo a próxima edição no hotel antes de vir para cá.
Stop. My greatest passion is making books. I love making books about comics, and they always start with me being interested in something and wanting to read about that, and after a while realizing the book I want to read does not exist. There is no such book as the one I want to read, and after a while realizing, okay, I have to write that book. And it usually starts with me being interested in how comics have been mirroring our culture, but also how comics have been influencing our culture, how it's a back and forth between our culture and comics, and in how that interaction works.
Ele adora fazer livros e a ideia dele é escrever os livros que ele gostaria de ler. E a preocupação dele é mostrar como os quadrinhos são influenciados pela sociedade, a cultura, e como os quadrinhos influenciam a cultura.
So here are for instance, a book about propaganda in comics, and that's I used a very broad definition of propaganda. So it's not only the sort of Nazi propaganda machine, which is bad, but all ways that comics are used to influence us, which can be very subtle. For instance, if we look at Blondie, when it was started, it soon turned into a traditional family strip. And in a traditional family strip in the 30s and the 40s, the man went to work, the woman stayed home, had an apron on, and cooked food and took care of the children. Normal at the time. But if you keep doing that into the late 20th century, into the 21st century, it starts to become reactionary and telling people who are reading it, it's normal for women to stay at home and just cook and don't have a job and don't have a career. But that's more subliminal in comparison to, for instance, a lot of comics that are there to tell you something about the world. But all comics transmit ideas all the time.
Before the marriage,
Yeah.
Blondie worked as secretary.
Yeah, she was a flapper. She was independent before she married, but after she married, no.
Então ele está falando que ele não está tratando nesse livro Comics and Propaganda, Comic Art Propaganda.
Yep.
Mas não do jeito tradicional. Ele trabalha com a propaganda que transmite ideias subliminarmente. Tá? Então ele pega o exemplo da Blondie, a Belinda, que iniciou as family strips nos anos 30, 40, 50. E nessas histórias, nas tiras e nas histórias, a Blondie era a esposa que ficava em casa cozinhando para os filhos, para o marido, e o marido é que saía para trabalhar. Então, no final do século XX, agora no século XXI, isso é um reacionarismo. E eu lembrei que essa personagem, antes de casar, ela era uma secretária. Depois do casamento, ela virou dona de casa.
All right, so I've also done books about religion. The Comics Go to Hell is a book about the devil, the myth of the devil, and hell, and how that has been portrayed in comics, and what that says about our culture. And I did a book about Jewish culture as well, looking at how that has been portrayed in different parts of the world and in different eras. Comics mirror our world a lot, and when reading them, they say a lot about the place and the time and the culture in which they were produced.
Esse livro, The Comics Go to Hell, é sobre a maneira como o diabo é apresentado nas histórias em quadrinhos. É uma coisa mais religiosa. Neste outro, as imagens judias nos quadrinhos, ele trata dos quadrinhos que ao longo do tempo foram retratando judeus e cultura judaica. Que os quadrinhos são um espelho da nossa realidade. E eu queria mostrar aqui, do lado de vocês, aqui o lado direito, Woody Allen. Houve uma tira de quadrinhos, né? Foi publicada pela Arte Nova, um álbum com a coletânea dessas tiras, né? Todas as histórias giravam em torno do Woody Allen indo ao psiquiatra, ao terapeuta, né? E ele trata de várias imagens, Maus, Spiegelman,
That
não consigo enxergar.
that's Shaloman, I think, is Israeli comic. Yeah.
É um livro muito interessante para ser publicado. It's an interesting book to be printed in Brazil,
Yeah.
because we have a community
All right.
of Jews in Brazil, here in São Paulo, and Pernambuco. The Jews who were sent to Brazil in the 17th century.
All right.
It went to Pernambuco, and they were prohibited to do Jewish things. Então, eu estou lembrando para ele, falando para ele que é legal publicar esse livro aqui no Brasil, porque tem uma comunidade judaica, né, grande, aqui em São Paulo e em Pernambuco. No século XVII, os judeus expulsos da Europa se estabeleceram em Pernambuco, em Recife. Eles eram proibidos da prática judaica. But the Jewish who went to Pernambuco built some synagogues.
All right.
They were forbidden to practice Judaism, and they built
Nice.
sinagogas no Balcar. Então, os judeus que vieram da Europa para Pernambuco, eles eram proibidos da prática judaica, que isso, a Inquisição proibia, matava, né, torturava. Mas em Pernambuco, apesar disso, eles construíram sinagogas, várias.
Yeah, I did a book on Swedish comics history in English. This is just to be able to give that away mostly and sell that to tell people what Swedish comics history has been all about. I have also been published in Portuguese before. This is an an anthology, and that's supposed to be me up there. And this is an anthology on feminism and comics, and I wrote a chapter on the current state of comics in Sweden, which is very much influenced by feminism, both as a direct theme, but also by the fact that a lot of the comics artists today in Sweden are women doing comics for female readers.
Esse livro aqui fala da história dos quadrinhos suecos, né? Os vários personagens, autores. E esse aqui ele organizou, é um livro também sobre a questão de gênero, sexualidade, saiu no Brasil. Né? Esse é ele, caricaturado, e ele fez um texto sobre o quadrinho sueco do ponto de vista da questão do feminismo, né, que está sendo discutido muito, não só na Suécia, né, no mundo inteiro.
And this is, of course, my thesis, which I wrote a few years ago, in media and communications, so I feel very at home right here. And I looked at, again, I'm interested in culture and comics, and I decided to look at the Middle East and how comics, which is does not have a long history in the Middle East. It has been introduced, mostly influenced by comics in the West, coming and being read, and after a while also being produced in the Middle East. So it was me looking at how does that work, because you can trace comics in Europe, you can trace that back to cartoons, to caricature magazines, and there's a whole lineage leading up to that. But what happens if you have a culture where you don't have that, you just sort of jump in the middle of that evolvement? So this is some of the things I looked in my dissertation, and that was very, very interesting to look at.
Esse livro sobre os quadrinhos no Oriente Médio foi a dissertação de mestrado dele. Ele fala que na Europa há uma tradição, a gente pode fazer uma linha do tempo ali para ver a continuidade ou rupturas ali, né? Mas no Oriente Médio não se tem essa tradição e os quadrinhos de lá de repente surgiram, né? E ele acha interessante mostrar, falar sobre esse tipo de esse quadrinho dessa região. Uma coisa interessante que ele falou antes e que eu esqueci de dizer, que ele fala da
Rutu Monan.
Que é uma quadrinista israelense muito boa, que segue o estilo da linha clara do Hergé, né? E ela faz quadrinhos de Israel onde a gente não vai ver guerra, tá? É o dia a dia do público israelense. A gente teve publicado dela no Brasil A Visita, que é um álbum muito bom, e eu li recentemente a edição americana chamada Tunnels. Ali a gente encontra um pouco da questão religiosa, cultural, étnica, né? Mas com humor, tá? A Visita é bastante interessante, vale a pena ler.
Stop. So, that was a long preamble to get to the real talk here. I'm not going to keep going all that much longer because I have no voice, but I started writing this book in the late 1990s. It was an assignment to give a talk on black characters in comics, and I did my research, and there was no books, almost no articles, nothing on that. So I decided to collect all the information I had from my talk into a very small book in Swedish. Bing? Oh, yeah.
Ele percebeu que não havia muita coisa sobre a questão do negro nos quadrinhos, né? As pessoas negras nos quadrinhos, isso no final dos anos 80. Então ele começou a pesquisar e publicou em pequenos livros o material que ele conseguia coletar.
And this was just me being interested in a subject, realizing that it was important, and that there have been so many really bad stereotypical depictions of black people in comics throughout the years, and that this needs to be shown. Sometimes all the comics are censored. We have said we should not publish Tintin in Congo, for instance. I think it should be published, but with a preface saying this was drawn in the 1930s, 1940s. These characters look like this because of this and that. Because if we try to censor all that, we might fall into the problem of doing it again. So I like to discover all these, comment on them, and show them so we can learn from that.
Ele pesquisou a imagem, a representação, né, do negro nos quadrinhos, e ele fala especificamente da censura aos quadrinhos do Tintin, aquele álbum Tintin no Congo. Aqui foi publicado inicialmente como Tintin na África, e quando foi republicado tinha um prefácio fazendo o contexto daquela história. Então, e é isso que ele gostaria, que a história fosse publicada e tivesse um prefácio colocando a questão no seu tempo, ao invés de proibir. I said to them, in Brazil, there was an edition long ago, from the 70s, Tintin in Africa.
All right.
And then it was published in the 21st century with a preface and saying to people the context of the story.
Yeah. That's nice. So I published this book in Sweden, and I kept looking for more information, because when I start reading about something, I want to know more. And I realized after a couple of years there was still no big book on this subject. So I contacted a big American publisher, Fantagraphics, and said, would you like to publish this? And they said yes, but you need to make the book at least twice as big. There has to be a diversity, you have to show all these different aspects. But also, you're not black, so we need to have a preface by a professor who basically says that you're wrong. So this is what happened with the American edition.
Ele publicou esse livro pela Fantagraphics nos Estados Unidos, mas o editor falou assim, precisa ser o dobro do tamanho, precisa ter mais texto, e além disso precisa ter o prefácio de algum estudioso negro que diga que ele está errado.
It was actually, I was discussing with the editor of the American publisher, and he said the problem is because there's a big tension in America, racial tension, and in contrast with in Brazil, as far as I can understand, they've had for a long time had the one drop rule. If you have any ancestor that is black, you're black, no matter how you look, and there's a big tension going on there. And they said, you're going to write the first book and you're not black. And it's even more problematic because you're Swedish. That's as white as you get. So we're going to have to have a black person writing in this book.
O editor tem uma tensão muito grande nos Estados Unidos entre a comunidade negra, e a gente vê isso sempre no noticiário. E o editor falou para ele, você não é negro, você é sueco, muito branco, então é preciso ter um autor negro prefaciando o livro. Ele falou que é diferente aqui no Brasil, not so different here. More than 50% of the population is black.
Yeah.
Or we call here pardo. Father or mother white and the other black. But the majority of black people lives in the slums, the favelas. There's a difference, a social difference between black people and white people in Brazil. We have some gains in the recent time, but the majority of black people is poor. Então, eu estava falando para ele que não é tão diferente no Brasil, que aqui mais da metade da população é negra ou parda. Lá nos Estados Unidos eles não fazem uma distinção, você é negro ou você é branco. E eu disse para ele que a maior parte da população negra no Brasil vive nas favelas. Nós tivemos recentemente algum avanço, mas ainda temos uma maioria de pessoas negras pobres. and the violence against the Brazilian black people is huge. Eu falei da violência também, que é maior, né, com a população negra.
Because there were no books like this. The book has been published in several different languages, and whenever I do a new edition, I add a lot of pages with comics from that country to make it interesting, but also to make me learn more about the comics cultures of these countries. So this is the French edition, and I added a lot of French examples. Bing. And this is, of course, the brand new Portuguese edition, which I just got here. And I've added, I think, 12 new examples for that, for the Portuguese comics history.
Ele falou que cada vez que ele publica uma nova edição num outro país, ele adiciona mais páginas com personagens de onde o livro vai ser lançado. Aqui foi feita a edição francesa, então ele escreveu também sobre os personagens negros franceses, e aqui a edição brasileira, onde ele adicionou quadrinhos brasileiros com personagens negros.
All right, so here's the oldest example I've added to the book from Brazil. Aventuras de Chiquinho. This is Buster Brown. This is a direct copy of an American popular comics from the early 20th century, and but drawn here, published in a local children's comic book, and after a couple of years, one of the artists, there were several artists working on this, but Luis Gomez Loureiro, I think, added the character Benjamin. 1914 or 1915. I have not been able to verify exactly which year. Sorry.
Então, esse é o quadrinho mais antigo brasileiro que ele conseguiu encontrar, né, As Aventuras do Chiquinho, que no começo era muito marcado pelo Buster Brown, Richard Outport americano, às vezes era decalcado mesmo, né? E ele, o Luiz Gomes Loureiro desenhava também o amigo do Chiquinho, o Benjamin, que a gente pode ver aí o tipo, né? A boca principalmente, que é um estereótipo, né? Em torno de 1914, 1915, eu também não lembro a data exata. Tá? Mas o Chiquinho, Buster Brown, aparece na revista Tico Tico desde o começo. Chiquinho is published in Tico Tico since the beginning, in 1905.
This character was added, like you just said, 10 years after, and was added, and in many years later, in the 1940s, this artist did an interview, and he told the story of how he wanted to introduce this character, and that it was based on a young black servant boy from his home. So he wanted to introduce this character and make it a positive character, not a stereotypical subservient, but based on the actual boy. He wanted to make it have his own ideas, his own direction, and not just be a sidekick to the white boy. At the same time, you can tell that the design is extremely stereotypical. He's pitch black. He has these big white eyes. He has this ridiculously big and red mouth. That's a black face. Yeah. So even though this artist wanted to portray a positive image and make a positive character, because of the time and the way black people were depicted, it still turned out that way.
O Loureiro, numa entrevista, afirmou que o Benjamin foi baseado num garoto garoto que servia a casa dele, mas ele queria que o personagem fosse positivo, tá? Então, não só um ajudante do Chiquinho, mas um personagem com uma posição em que ele tinha uma postura própria, não subserviente ao Chiquinho. Mas o tipo físico dele, como eu havia comentado, é bem estereotipado, né? Como era feito na época.
So this is a slightly newer example, 1931. Azeitona, that's the black character there. Introduced in a comic, 1931. 3 boys, which were friends and equals, as far as I can tell, in the storytelling. It's not that the black character was in any way subservient to the other 2. They are equal friends, which is very early. In 1930, you did not have that, for instance, in the States, in comics. You did not have a black character that was the equal of the other characters. They were usually secondary characters or sidekicks or whatever. But, again, the design is horrible and stereotypical. Look at the lips of that character. And if you compare to the others, I mean, they're all stylized, but the stereotypical traits are much more pronounced in the black character.
Então ele mostra o Reco Bolona e Azeitona como uma forma diferente, né, de tratar o garoto negro, que é amigo dos outros 2, né, e ele, embora ele tenha os desenhos do Style são caricaturais, mas o Azeitona essa caricatura é mais acentuada. Então é o blackface, né, com os olhos grandes, os lábios enormes e tal. Agora, o Azeitona não era subserviente aos outros 2. Os 3 eram amigos. E ele realça que isso nos anos 30 nos Estados Unidos não seria possível. The one who was mocked by the others was Bolon.
All right.
It's a kind of gordophobia. Prejudice. But in that time.
Yeah. What I find fascinating here is that character is very clearly based on stereotypical traits for black characters, which were started in American newspaper strips. So this artist has looked at that, copied that, even though he wanted to tell a story of 3 equal characters. And most fascinating for me is actually the red bow, because that is also taken from American comics, but that in America is a signal that this is a girl.
Yeah, yes.
But here it's very obviously a boy. So I'm sort of wondering how that happened. I do not know, but for me as an historian, that's very interesting.
Ele falou que o personagem é baseado nas tiras de quadrinhos americanas, tá? Esse estereótipo. Agora, tem a fita no cabelo do Azeitona, mas ele é um menino. Então, a gente não sabe porque o Luiz Sá fez essa fita na cabeça do personagem e ele realça que nos Estados Unidos não se encontrava uma tira em que 3 amigos, sendo um deles negros, fossem iguais. I don't know.
No?
And they are based in theatrical cartoons.
Right.
Yeah, Max Fleischer.
Oh, right. So it's still American.
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
The eyes with.
Yeah. They're very Fleischer. I get it. All right.
Falei para ele que tem muito a ver com o desenho animado do Max Fleischer, da Bat Boop, né? Com o olho cortadinho e tal. In the head of azeitona, he said it's a bone.
Oh, like the native stereotype. All right, all right. Yeah. Sorry. Now. Even further in history, 1959. Wow. This is also early internationally. Here's a comic which has the main character being black. And as you know, and I don't need to tell you, it's based on Brazilian myth and folklore. For me, looking at it, I'm sort of interested in is this actually a black character? Or is this a spirit which happens to be black? Is it supposed to be a representation of a black person? Or is it just, I mean, if it's a spirit, it could be green or blue or yellow or whatever, but it happens to be black. And his girlfriend is also black. And in a very stereotypical pitch black fashion. And I have no answer to that, but I find it fascinating that it was published so early. Again, internationally, this is very early to have a main character being black.
Interessou ele o fato de ser o primeiro, publicado em 59, né, quadrinho internacional que tem personagem negro como protagonista. Ele é baseado no nosso folclore. Ele falou assim, podia ser azul, verde, mas ele é negro. E ele tem uma namorada negra, né? E é interessante notar que o vilão é branco, que é um caçador. Né? The villain is a white man. He's a hunter. And there's a lot of black people. This is an Indian.
Yeah.
So really it was out of his time.
Yeah. For me, it's impressive.
E acho que é impressionante é o fato desses personagens, principalmente o Pererê.
We need to quicken this up because I'm losing my voice. Bing. So here's another character that's early. This is De Souza introducing Jeremias already in 1960, which is just 1 year after Turma de Mônica was started. So this is again very early to add a black character as a secondary character in a major commercial comic. Again, we did not have that, for instance, in the States. But look at the initial iteration. It is an extremely stereotypical version, which has slowly evolved as the time evolves. Following such a character is very interesting because it tells you about how time and culture changes. And that's mirrored in how this character has evolved. And if you try to do it like that today, that would not work at all.
Ele está falando da evolução do personagem Benjamin, aliás, de Jeremias, desculpa, Benjamin é outro. Desde os anos 60, que era mais estereotipado, anos 70, ele é um personagem que não poderia ter merchandising nos Estados Unidos. E essa evolução do personagem mostra como a cultura brasileira foi também se transformando ao longo do tempo, né, até chegar a este desenho do Jeremias. Na verdade, nos quadrinhos ele é assim, né, mas na graphic novel ele é apresentado dessa forma. É um espelho, né, como ele diz, das mudanças sociais.
And the real sort of example of how time is changing is, like you said, the new graphic novel here. There have been several, because this has been a very minor character. It was early introduced, but not much used, I would say. But now you can actually do graphic novels with this character as the main character, and also have it actually talk about race, about the tensions in society in Brazil, and being done by black artists. So this is sort of a microcosm of the development of the culture in Brazil, sort of mirrored in comics.
Então ele falou o seguinte, que um personagem menor, né? Ele nunca foi um personagem que tivesse assim, grande influência nas histórias, né? É um personagem secundário, e ele vai mostrando essa evolução, e que principalmente a graphic novel foi feita por artistas negros. Isso é muito importante. I also add that, like Azeitona, he was part of the group,
Yeah.
and accepted by them. E a graphic novel trata de questões de negritude no Brasil, né, a situação do negro no Brasil. Afinal de contas, ele é de uma família negra de classe média, middle class family, and he discovers his past. Ele descobre o seu passado como negro, né? Ele passa a se ver também como negro na sociedade. He sees himself as a black boy in society.
And these are, I think, subjects that de Souza could not have talked about in 1960. So again, that says a lot about what's happening in the world where these comics are produced and consumed by us. What is accepted? What can artists get away with? How much does that mirror our time? Does that say that de Souza was a racist there? I don't know. That is a racist image. But that was also an image that was common at that time. So as an historian, that's difficult to say. But you can definitely say that there's a historical development here.
Ele não tem certeza se esse estereótipo é típico da época, eu creio que sim. Então ele vai falar dessa transformação do personagem conforme a cultura vai aceitando essas e vai também exigindo que se façam mudanças no personagem. The Brazilian culture demands that the character is actualized, is to be made.
Updated, yeah. True. All right, a favorite of mine, de Souza again. I love de Souza. We talked about this earlier. As an researcher, you don't have to like the comics you read, but you have to find them interesting for the purpose of research. And I find this fascinating that this was done in 1976, of course because of the enormous popularity of Pelé. But also, this is done in cooperation with Pelé. And he was involved. De Souza did interviews with him about his childhood to make sure that he was portraying it correctly. And still, it's a rather stereotypical drawing. So again, here you have an artist who really, really wants to portray this positively, but is still resorting to stereotypical traits visually, because that's the sort of toolbox available to him at the time.
Pelé approved the character.
Yeah.
Ele estava falando que devido à popularidade do Pelé, né, a revista do Pelézinho foi lançada e o personagem, apesar da popularidade e tal, ele ainda tem os estereótipos comuns da forma como as pessoas negras eram retratadas.
Big jump in history, but like I said, I can't talk much more. This is a beautiful graphic novel done in 2016, based on the story that I'm sure you all know about Carolina and her book, which was published all over the world. Now it's done as a graphic novel to again put focus on her story and her the information about the favelas and the life in the favelas. And it's done by two black artists who are involved, of course, in this and want to communicate these things through this graphic novel.
Deu uma pulada no tempo. Carolina é uma biografia em quadrinhos da escritora Carolina Maria de Jesus, conhecida internacionalmente, e feita por dois artistas negros brasileiros. Falando de favela, a Carolina foi empregada doméstica, antes de se tornar uma escritora conhecida e premiada. Carolina was a handmaid
Yeah. Oh yeah.
before she becomes a writer.
Yeah. Now, this is, if you haven't read this, it's a beautiful, very black and white comic, and it's beautifully rendered and telling the story.
Essa graphic novel, na verdade é um livro de quadrinhos, né? Formato livro. É muito bom, em preto e branco, tá? E com design, desenho muito bom também.
Another favorite. This is a beautiful, beautiful Brazilian graphic novel made by a Brazilian artist whom I also think is black, who for a long time did research on the historical fact that there was a black community created here by runaway slaves who managed to be self-sufficient and self-supporting for almost 100 years. And he has done 2 graphic novels about that, which are published all over the world and have had a lot of awards. And it's also beautiful. It's really, really well told.
Angola Janga, como vocês sabem, trata dos escravos fugidos que se tornaram resistentes à escravidão e durante muitos anos. E ele fala que é uma graphic novel muito bonita. Eu concordo com ele. E o autor fez toda uma pesquisa antes de fazer esse trabalho.
And right now I need to stop. I have more examples, but I can't talk, and you're all falling asleep. So thank you so much for doing this, for translating, and thank you all for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ele falou que ele não pode mais por causa da asma, né? Ele pede ele continuar, mas abre a palavra.
Oh yeah. And afterwards, the other book, you can buy it, and I can sign it if you want to. So yeah, but yes. Oh, questions, of course. Yes, if you have.
I have one that was crossing my mind. You mentioned earlier that there's been a huge prejudice in regards to comics, that the people reading comics would become illiterate, whereas I think most of us have realized that is completely not wrong. It rather stimulates your creativity, and in my case, I think most of my literacy when I was younger came from Donald Duck.
There you go.
If I would have started with Dostoevsky, I would probably have given up.
Yeah.
Quite early. Do you think this prejudice is still around, or has it migrated to other sectors? And where are the comics in the digital?
Yeah.
I have to translate
Oh.
the question.
Português. Portuguesa.
Na edição portuguesa brasileira, né? Do Pato Donald. Né? E isso fez parte da literacia dele, né? Do aprendizado. E aí ele pergunta para o Stromberg se ele ainda acha que hoje em dia, né, essa questão tratada no livro ainda é forte.
So, there are several answers to that. One is that every generation of kids and youngsters have a new thing that they like, which the parents don't understand. Right now it's probably TikTok or whatever, I don't know, I'm old. But these things make the parents scared because they can't control that. And often there are miscommunications between generations. So the parents often say, okay, so it's all TikTok's fault. Let's stop TikTok. If we stop TikTok, my children will start talking to me again and it'll all be fine. This has happened again and again and again and again and again all through history. We have texts from the Romans writing that the new generation are stupid because they're doing this or that. And in the 50s and the 60s, it was comics. Comics was new, kids loved them, the older generation didn't understand, and they decided this is the problem. If we burn all the comics, the problem with the youth is going to go away. Since then, it's been video games. It's been, in Sweden for a while, it was role-playing games. If you actually played role-playing games, you would turn into a Satanist. There was like 2-hour programs on major TV where psychologists were discussing this and telling all parents, if your child is playing role-playing games, burn them, destroy them, they're going to turn into Satanists. Today, if someone wants to play an actual physical game, I think all parents are applauding. These are problems when young persons find new things and the parents don't understand. And comics got in the way. And it was spread all over the world that you should not read comics.
É uma questão geracional. Cada geração tem coisas novas. Ele vai até a Roma antiga para dizer que os romanos diziam que a nova geração era estúpida. Né? Nos anos 50 e 60 eram as histórias em quadrinhos. Então, se você é pai, tem que queimar essas revistas para o seu filho voltar a conversar com você. Agora o TikTok, né, que querem proibir para as crianças, para voltarem a falar com seus pais, que não necessariamente acontece. Né? Depois foi o role-playing game, né, o RPG, que diziam que quem jogava virava satanista. E ele cita programas de televisão que discutiram essa questão. Né? Você joga o RPG e, ato contínuo, você vira um satanista. Então, cada geração vai ter uma diferença em relação à outra. Os pais hoje veem o filho jogando videogame e aplaudem, porque eles também jogaram videogame. Né? Bem ruim aqueles videogames. Então, a questão dos quadrinhos também continua. Né? Essa questão de quem lê quadrinhos não estuda, né? Foge da leitura. Continua sendo essa perseguição.
And the second part of that answer is that was so that saturated all culture in most countries in the world. Actually, it started in America, but it spread all over the world, and that saturated the other cultures and the idea of comics. And in Sweden, for instance, comics were not supposed to be in school. If you brought a comic to school, the teacher threw it away. They were not supposed to be in libraries. These bans are not there anymore. But the general idea is still there often. And that comics is sort of a lower art form, and it's not to be taken as seriously as the major art forms of cinema or art or theater or whatever. So I think it's still there, but more subconsciously. Not that the teachers say no comics, but when the teachers are planning the year's course, no one is saying, hey, how about comics? Because that's subconsciously removed from the discussion. So, which I think is, even worse, actually. Yeah.
Um movimento que começou nos Estados Unidos de banir, né, os quadrinhos na escola, das bibliotecas, e hoje em dia as crianças não são mais proibidas de levar quadrinhos nas escolas, mas ele está falando da experiência na Suécia. Quando se faz o planejamento das aulas, os professores não levam em consideração os quadrinhos. Here in Brazil, teachers use comics
Mm-hmm.
in their teaching,
All right.
and they valorize
Mm-hmm.
even make the students make the comics,
Nice.
small comics.
Yeah.
They not reject.
Nice.
They use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this censorship doesn't come to Brazil.
Now, in Sweden, for instance, comics are used in schools now, but that's a fairly new phenomenon. That's like 21st century. So the problems of the moral panic of the 50s and the 60s stayed for quite a long time. So.
Ele falou que na Suécia agora os quadrinhos são usados, mas demorou bastante, né, para esse preconceito dos anos 50 e 60 diminuir, né? Então, no final do século 20 para o 21 começou a haver essa mudança.
I think we had more questions there, or no? Yep, you go.
Geralmente, quando a gente vê quadrinhos, eles se dividem temporalmente os negros da seguinte forma: no passado são servos, no passado são selvagens, no presente são servos, no futuro são policiais. E se alguém não lembra disso, lembra do Bishop, do X-Men. Ele poderia comentar sobre se há essas categorias mesmo?
In the comics, he make a division. In the past, the black character is a savage.
Sometimes.
And the present is a servant.
Mm-hmm.
And the future, he is a policeman.
Mm-hmm.
Like X-Men's Bishop.
Mm-hmm.
He would like you to comment.
I mean, if my book is all the examples are in historical order, and you can really see the development, definitely. And things that were okay in the 19th century are not okay now. Still, you find a lot of stereotypical traits, like you say. Right now, there's a big debate in France because a new album with Spirou has been pulled by the publisher for containing stereotypical depictions of women and black people. And I assume this is because the artists were rather old and they were learned how to draw in the 60s and 70s. So they applied those ideas now. And it was actually out for about a year, but it's been pulled now and everyone is trying to buy a copy to have it for an example. But that shows that these artists were trained 50 years ago and have not evolved with the culture and are trying to draw as they did 50 years ago. And the publisher and the public say, no, we don't want that. So there is an evolution, but it's slow, too slow, what I would say.
caso na França, dos editores não quererem mais publicar a revista Spirou por causa dos estereótipos femininos e dos negros. Os artistas, ele fala, se formaram 50 anos atrás, ou até antes, e eles não evoluíram com a sociedade. Então eles continuam fazendo a mesma coisa que naquela época não era considerada um preconceito. E ele falou que o livro dele é feito na ordem histórica, né? Então você tem uma linha histórica aí para ver como é que a representação do negro foi ao longo do tempo.
Thank you.
We know that comics is, as a medium, kind of, as we know today, kind of started as a mass market thing, essentially. And throughout, like, the 70s, 80s, 90s, they kind of carved out a space for themselves in, like, the fine arts realm of things, you know. I'm reading a lot of, like, French comic people recently, and I'm always astounded at how they call it, like, the ninth art.
Words are important, and putting words on something changes them. And by saying comics is the ninth art, I love that expression, by the way. You change the perception. This is why, in my writing in English, I never call comics a medium. I call it an art form. There's a difference. A medium is how you communicate. Art form says that there's a cultural value to it. So I always use art form because of that. Sorry.
No, yeah. What I wanted to ask is, how do you feel that this movement, specifically of like wanting to go into like the fine arts, you know, that type of discussion, and wanting to like, oh, there are comics authors now and comic artists instead of just people who do comics, has impacted the representation of black people and black images?
Yeah. You want to translate that?
Ele perguntou inicialmente, na verdade ele falou da questão da relação dos quadrinhos com a arte, né, que ao colocar o designar termo nona arte, né, na França, faz valorizar, né, os quadrinhos. O professor concorda com isso, diz que essa expressão que ele gosta muito, ele usa muito o termo art form. Quando se fala mídia, é uma coisa de comunicar. Art form é falar que um produto cultural é uma forma de arte, né? Depois você perguntou...
Eu perguntei especificamente como esse movimento de querer entrar no reino das artes, mais do que no reino das comunicações ou no reino do entretenimento, impactou a representação de pessoas negras em quadrinhos.
So, hugely is the answer. When we went from, I mean, there's still a lot of mass market comics. Today it's mostly young adult graphic novels, which sells hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies. It's not Batman anymore. It's not Spider-Man. It's Heartstopper, for instance. That's selling millions of copies, much more than any Batman or Spider-Man comic is selling today. But what the graphic novel sort of introduction has meant is that you're allowed to talk about more difficult subjects. And the great thing about comics is that they are very... If you're a good comics artist, they're easy to consume, but they're cheap to make. So if you have the idea of you want to do a subversive comic and you want to talk about race or historical problems, you can do that, and you can get that published. If you want to do that in a film, probably not, because it's too expensive and too hard and there are too many people involved. So comics is a good form, and I think that normally comics is at the forefront of cultural and social change, and that the artists are usually left-wing, and they are transmitting their ideas openly or more secretly.
Perguntou como é que isso impacta, né, na questão das pessoas negras. Ele falou imensamente. Ele fala que a graphic novel tem um impacto muito grande, né, grandes tiragens, né, mais do que o Batman ou o Homem-Aranha, né? Então você faz uma graphic novel e é um custo de produção barato e que vende muitas cópias. Você faz um filme sobre a questão feminina, a questão dos negros, um filme que custa muito caro. E os quadrinhos, eles estão ali à frente, né, do cinema, por exemplo, para tratar desses assuntos. I have a question. No, Natália.
Yeah. I was wondering how was the reception of your work about the Middle East comics, both within the Swedes and the Middle East community in Sweden. Could you please talk a little about that?
Come again, about my Black Images book, or
No, your thesis.
my thesis. Oh, right, sorry, I didn't hear.
Ela perguntou como é que foi o impacto do livro dele, a tese dele, sobre o quadrinho no Oriente Médio, né? E na Suécia também, né?
Tanto na Suécia quanto entre as comunidades do Oriente Médio dentro da Suécia.
But the short answer is that I got my doctorate, so it was positively received. No, I was going to write about something completely different, but my mind, when I find something interesting, I just go for it. And early on in my doctorate, I realized that there were no articles, there were very few articles on how Arabs and Muslims have been portrayed in comics. So I wrote an article about that. This was after 9/11, so I decided to in academia you have to be very specific. So I looked at, were there any Arab and or Muslim superheroes in comics from the States after 9/11, and how were they portrayed? This was my idea, and what I found was that yes, there were Arab and Muslim superheroes, and they were mostly done to contradict the general idea in America at the time of Arabs and Muslims being dangerous suicide bombers that should be, kept away from America. So they were positive, but they were all done by white Americans who had no idea what they were doing. So the characters were very stereotypical, like Dust, for instance, the most popular character, a character from a Middle Eastern country who's an X-Men, a mutant, and her ability, of course, is to turn into sand. Because, we all know that the Middle East is only sand, all of it. So, yeah, sorry.
Esse foi o doutorado dele. Quando ele vê alguma coisa que interessa, ele vai em frente. E não havia nenhuma publicação que tratasse de como os árabes e muçulmanos são retratados. Aí ele lembra de uma personagem dos X-Men que era muçulmana, não era uma das principais personagens, e ela fugia do estereótipo do muçulmano, árabe muçulmano, que era terrorista. Mas o poder que ela tinha era se transformar em areia. Afinal, Oriente Médio, deserto, né? E isso é estereotipado. Né? Então, ele vai... there's another character, Kamala Khan.
That came after my article. So I've read all the Kamala Khan, but that character did not exist when I wrote my article because it's quite old.
A personagem Kamala Khan não existia quando ele escreveu, né? Mas now, what do you think about this character?
I think I read the first part, which I thought was really good. And I think it was really good because it was written by an American who had actually converted to Muslim faith and who had an understanding of that culture. So this is why, if you read the Kamala Khan comics, and actually if you look at the TV series, there was a TV series made by that as well, the interaction in that family seems very genuine. And I think that is because it was written by someone who's actually inside that culture and can write from that. So yeah.
Falando da Kamala Khan, que é a personagem da Marvel, que vira uma super-heroína e tal, ele falou que ela é mais... ela tem uma identidade maior com os muçulmanos, porque foram artistas muçulmanos ou convertidos ao islamismo que fizeram essas revistas, including women artists.
I think that I know that the writer was a woman. I'm not sure if the artist was.
A roteirista era uma mulher muçulmana. Então, esses estereótipos, a relação familiar foi mostrada de uma maneira real porque são pessoas que vivem essa situação, conhecem essa situação. E ele falou anteriormente que a personagem que vira areia, não lembro o nome dela agora, foi feita para leitores brancos americanos. Então essa diferença entre a personagem do X-Men e a Kamala Khan. Espero que o homônimo dela ganhe hoje.
And as an answer to a question about how it was received, 2 years after that was published, I was approached by 2 editors who wanted to do a full volume on that theme, and they wanted me to write an article. And I said, "Oh, that's impressive. Where did the idea come from to do this anthology?" From your article. So they read my article and they made a full book on that. So now there are many articles on that, but not before I wrote mine. So yeah.
Ele falou que quando ele escreveu o artigo dele, não havia artigos sobre esses personagens muçulmanos e que hoje existem vários. Então, a pesquisa nessa área avançou. I had a question. What are you interested now to
Right
write
now?
about?
Yeah. Right now, I'm finishing a book. It's going to be sent to the publisher in a week or two, and it's nothing like this. Again, it's because it's a book that doesn't exist. I found out that in the 1920s, 1930s, and the 1940s, a Swedish comic was published all over the world. It was almost the only one that was not American, that had worldwide distribution. And it was distributed at the time when a lot of comics cultures was started. So a lot of the famous artists read that comic and was inspired by that, copied that. But this has sort of been erased from comics history. So I've done a lot of research, and actually I was in Curitiba 2 years ago. I found out that this comic was published in Brazil. No one knew that. We found someone who had done collector's cards that were sold with candy in the 1930s. And one of the images was very obviously copied from the Swedish comic. So we're saying, well, how is this possible if it wasn't published here? So our first idea was that it could have been brought here by German immigrants, because the comic was hugely popular in German, so much so that the Germans thought it was German, even though it was Swedish. But some of my friends in Curitiba managed to dig up and show me that it was actually published here quite a lot. So that the artist in the 1930s could have read it in a Brazilian newspaper and then copied it. But that's what I'm writing about right now.
Do you know the name given in Brazil?
No, I can't remember. It's Adamson in most of the world and Silent Sam in the States. And was published in Japan and China, all over Europe, North America, South America. I have an interview with him in the 1940s that it says it's published in all countries in the world except Russia. I don't think that's true, but it was published all over the world. And I have proof that, for instance, Hergé, who did the big Tintin comic, he read Adamson and was inspired by that and stole several jokes. And he even drew in Adamson in one of the Tintin books. There's an Adamson. When people are in a South American country, fictitious one, and there's a big parade and everyone is dressed up as different characters. Someone is dressed up as Snoopy and someone's dressed up as Adamson. So he was very clearly a fan. I have also proof that, for instance, Osamu Tezuka from Japan, he read Adamson when he was a teenager. He even made a book called Adamson and What You Can Learn as a Comics Artist when he was 17. So these things influenced these early artists, and they have then influenced their comics cultures. So this is me trying to reinstate this comic into the history of comics in the world.
Eu perguntei para ele qual que é o próximo projeto dele. Então ele falou assim, não é nada parecido com o que ele já fez. É sobre um quadrinho sueco do começo do século XX, da década de 20, que foi um sucesso mundial, foi até publicado no Brasil. Ele descobriu que esse personagem foi publicado aqui. Ele não lembra o nome que deram aqui no Brasil. E teve figurinhas na década de 30 com personagens, e esse personagem aparecia nessas figurinhas. Esse personagem fez muito sucesso até na China, tal, exceto na Rússia. O personagem deixa eu me lembrar. Inspirou o Hergé a fazer o Tintin. O Hergé copiou várias coisas desse personagem, né?
Adamson.
E até algumas piadas do personagem o Hergé colocou nas revistas do Here we call it Tintin. Nas revistas dos álbuns do Tintin.
Pegando a ideia que foi discutida sobre grandes meios de massa, por exemplo, a ideia que os quadrinhos são menos preconceituosos. Dois personagens de cinema vindo dos quadrinhos que são mais radicais. Blade. Nunca você vai fazer um filme em que um quadrinho que o protagonista mata um monte de brancos decepados. É mais radicalismo que... Onde eu quero chegar? O cinema negro americano parece que é mais radical que os quadrinhos. Segundo personagem, que é um exemplo, Killmonger. Se ele pudesse comentar sobre, neste caso específico, do cinema negro, se ele tem alguma coisa comparado.
He asks, there's two characters in the American movies that came from the comics. Blade, a black vampire who...
Vampire Hunter.
Vampire hunter. I think it's vampire killer here.
Maybe.
And he kills white people, white vampires. In Killmonger, esse...
É o vilão do Black Panther, do primeiro.
é the villain of the Black Panther, the first movie. want to comment?
I mean, Black Panther especially was revolutionizing when it was published first, because it was in America. It was the major character is in its own title. Blade was also, but that was a bit later. They were both very, very early and important in the representation of black people in superhero comics. But in the comics, they were not killing white people mostly, because that was too. This is in the 60s and 70s. That was too rough. Now in the movies they can do that because it's 50 years later. Again, that says about the culture is changing, and that now you can depict that and it's okay. But just the fact that they were black were revolutionizing in the 60s and the 70s in comics. So yeah.
Ele falou que o Pantera Negra e depois o Blade foram importantíssimos na época, que eram dois personagens negros, e ele fala o seguinte, que naquela época eles não poderiam matar brancos, né? Mas que hoje o cinema acompanhou as mudanças, né? E eles podem fazer isso. Então isso mostra, quer dizer, as histórias desses personagens têm 50, 60 anos nos quadrinhos. E nesse tempo, né, o cinema pôde representar essa violência, né, dos personagens.
Pode encerrar aqui, mas o Fernando Ventura estava pesquisando as figurinhas, né?
Será que essas figurinhas dos anos 30 que ele comentou, não era aquela. Como é que é o nome, Selby? Lê aí. Juquinha?
Zequinha.
Zequinha.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. And this is the one.
Zequinha.
So a colleague of mine in Brazil sent me this and says you need to look into that. This is why I went to Curitiba, and this is why we looked for this, and this is how I finally found the publication of Adamson here in Brazil. So that was an interesting investigation. So.
I thought the character was a child, but
He's an old man, bald old man. Yeah. Very typical of early 20th century comics. So. We really need to stop. My throat is hurting. Sorry.
Então, agora a gente encerrou a parte das perguntas. Vamos dar uma folga para a garganta, to your throat.
Yes.
E começar a sessão de autógrafos. A gente agradece imensamente a presença do professor Stromberg e deseja que ele volte sempre para o Brasil, será sempre bem recebido. We thank you for your presence here.
Thank you.
And we wish you come back whenever you can, and will be well received.
Thank you. I will talk to the publishers and see if they're interested in the Jewish images, since you said it might be interesting here. So yeah, thank you, everyone. Like I said, the book is here.